All right, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So Xovis has been in the business of queue management and people counting for the last 12 years. We've been used to delivering wait times and other passenger throughput KPIs to help manage queues. Then obviously the world changed. And as a technology company, we had to decide how to move forward and answer one main question. How are we going to keep airports safe? So we had to switch gears and develop a solution that was going to answer this question. Now in airports, there's a lot of queuing by nature. So you have restrooms, taxi queues, security checkpoints, passport control. All of these areas where people line up makes it really difficult to ensure and monitor physical distancing. Now, when talking about short-term recovery goals, tackling physical distancing was one of the first recovery methods. Airports were really quick to put down floor decals, so passengers would adhere to those physical distancing guidelines of 6 feet or 2 meters between each traveler. Now, while these quick recovery initiatives have been very helpful, data is going to help you. Having accessible real-time data through different technologies like people flow management will provide airports with the information that they need to be able to identify high-risk areas and better understand the dynamics of the areas where people are too close. So with our technology, our ceiling-mounted sensors, which were originally developed to identify individuals and estimate the queue waiting times, we're now able to identify when passengers in a queue are not in compliance with the physical distancing guidelines that are in place. So here's an example of, here's a map, it's a physical distancing map on the left. It's a general security checkpoint. You can see the high-risk areas are represented by the darker colors. The number on the right is actually a Xovis-defined KPI, which we have called a PDI, which stands for a physical distancing indicator. This represents the average risk associated with proximity. Basically, the higher the number, the higher the risk of physical distancing being breached. So having access to this real-time view really provides airports with the information like if they should widen the stanchions in the queue so that passengers are not too close, or when to maybe tell a document checker to hold the line a bit until the congestion decreases at the baggage belt. Airports can really use these insights to trigger changes in their queuing procedures or put up additional signage. Using our physical distancing solution, you can also make comparisons. So here we have an airport where on the left, this was before they had practiced any social distancing initiatives. You can see that the PDI is 2.7. You can see the darker areas representing those high risk where people are too close. The after is when they actually put floor decals down. So you can see the PDI has decreased and the areas where there's high risk has also decreased. So using this kind of technology, you can determine whether your initiatives are successful or not. One of our US airport customers, they've been utilizing our physical distancing solution. And one thing they've actually found is that passengers will social distance on their own during periods of low activity. However, when it's busy and congested, they're less likely to social distance. So with the insight into these trends, they've learned to expect to see higher PDI values during periods of high passenger volume. Now, human behavior is very tricky. It's tricky to predict, it's tricky to manage. But with this information, you'll be able to make better and more knowledgeable business decisions. Now, a common concern that I've heard from a lot of my customers is capacity. So if traffic numbers were to return anywhere close to what they were pre-COVID, and if the physical distancing guidelines stay in place, the queue lines will be out the main doors of the terminal into the parking garages. Now, some airports are lucky in that they have designated overflow areas, for check-in, for security, for passport control. But this isn't common. Airports weren't designed to accommodate this. According to a recent study by Eurocontrol, I thought this was interesting. Now, they mentioned that the provision of space is critical if these guidelines for physical distancing stay. So let's just take a look at what they discovered. So for the same passenger numbers in a pre-COVID queue, 50% more space is required at check-in, 100% more space at security, and then 35 to 50% more space at boarding gates. So one way to help with this lack of space is this idea of virtual queuing. So the concept is that the individual can either reserve a specific time slot similar to a reservation prior to arriving to the airport, or they can scan a QR code upon entrance to the airport. Then they're free to either go grab a coffee, do a little shopping pre-security, and then they'll be notified when it's their turn to join the queue. The idea behind this is that you're controlling and limiting the number of passengers in the specific queuing area. Lastly, passengers really just want to feel a sense of confidence that when they travel, they're not going to be at risk of exposure. So we've already seen the increase in sanitation practices, the PPE vending machines, the social distancing. Another way to instill confidence is through using technology for face mask detection. So this type of technology can be used in many different areas. So it can be used upon entrance into a screening area if the traveler is not wearing a mask. Possibly an e-gate integration could deny them entrance. It's a little video here just showing our technology. One way to also instill confidence is showing statistics to travelers through signage or through a mobile app or airport website. So this can be a really powerful tool. So basically what you're showing them is that the airport is dedicated to their health and well-being, and you're utilizing specific technology to keep them safe. I think 2020 and beyond, there's going to be a movement, and we've already seen it, of travel, health, and wellness, and technology will really be on the forefront of this. And that's it for me.